Previously, ghosts only occasionally appeared in unexplained incidents. Some of them were kind and harmless, but some were evil and dangerous. 100 years ago, the power of the ghostly spirits increased dramatically, and they began to kill people for fun. The planet's population had been greatly reduced, and those who remained could barely survive. This continued until the arrival of the ghost spirit masters who can control and fight ghosts. Each ghost is connected to its guide by a special ghostly item. We are at the Phantom Spirit Masters Academy, where the first-year students are excitedly discussing what will happen next. No one notices how a tall, gloomy man, illuminated by a red light, moves along the corridor. Someone lightens the mood by saying that the life of an ordinary person is not so bad if you compare it to the fact that someone might die at the ceremony today. A silhouette of a man appears in the doorway, from which a red glow emanates, and everyone falls silent. Li Feng is one of the first to notice the examiner, who says that the moment has come that can change their lives. Li Feng was considered a loser since childhood because he received a very strange spiritual item, a butterfly with a skull. Everyone tried to humiliate him, and the spiritual object was called trash. But Li Feng never thought of giving up. He knew that the time would come when everyone would take him into account. "I'm not trash!" Li Feng shouted and fought back with all his might against his offenders. And now, sitting at the ceremony at the academy, Li Feng knew that he had no chance of failure. The examiner quietly coughed to silence the students, and everyone fell silent. The man introduced himself as the leader of the Association of Ghostly Spirits and the person responsible for conducting the ceremony. The students looked at the examiner with both fear and delight, and he told everyone to take out their spiritual objects. The boys began to take out and lay out various objects on the table: amulets, knives, bowls. The examiner told the students to channel their spiritual energy into the subjects, but few understood what was required of him. Li Feng couldn't quite believe that his strange item would be able to sense and accept his spiritual energy. The examiner formed a seal and said loudly, after a long period of gestation, it was time to release his ghost spirit. Black demonic blood began to pour out of the fat guy's cup, accompanied by the constant jumping of the cup. The ring that a beautiful blonde girl put on her finger began to heat up and left burns on her long fingers. The examiner demanded silence in the audience and explained that what was happening was a consequence of his inner power, which would help them awaken their ghostly spirit. There were also those who were already shedding tears because nothing had happened to their spiritual object. They were afraid that they would now have to live the life of an ordinary person. The examiner said that those whose subject did not perform well could pack their things and leave the room. Those who did not show spirit were very upset and began to shout at the examiner, but he remained calm. Li Feng was unable to awaken the spirit of his subject, but remained outwardly calm and tried to analyze the situation that was happening around him. He looked at his butterfly and tried not to panic like the others whose items also failed to show up. The plump guy began to insult the hero in front of everyone, saying that he could not expect anything else from the orphan and his useless object. Li Feng asked the plump guy not to be so overconfident, since even without the power of the item, he would be able to give him a beating. The fat man started calling names to everyone whose subject hadn't shown itself, and then one of the students suddenly jumped up, rolled up his sleeves, and ordered the fat man to keep his mouth shut. The blonde guy tried to run up to the fat man to hit him, but the examiner appeared behind him. The guy was contorted, his legs began to sway, he screamed, his pain was transmitted to everyone present, and there was complete silence. A second later, the guy was lying half dead on the floor of the auditorium, and a silent scream was in his glassy eyes. Everyone was scared. The examiner said that everyone whose subjects had not performed well should leave the room immediately. Li Feng left in a frustrated state, not knowing what to do next since he couldn't prove that he wasn't trash. As he left the classroom, Li Feng heard the examiner say that in order to gain control over a spirit, one must make a sacrifice and shed one's blood. Li looked at his spiritual object and couldn't believe that it had failed. He couldn't imagine how he could continue to live as a weakling. Meanwhile, in the auditorium, after the bloodletting to offer sacrifice to the spirits, the first students were already shouting enthusiastically that they had now become masters of the spirits. The spirits hovered around the auditorium, gathering the glances of other students. They came in completely different forms: people, dragons, monsters, animals. And then the unimaginable happened. A chubby bully boy screamed, from whose chest the tip of a blade with a bright red diamond eye at the base of the handle was visible. He spread his arms, raised his face to the ceiling, opened his mouth, and a strong stream of purple energy began to come out of it. An evil spirit was devouring him. The fat boy began to transform into a strong man. His arms increased by 3 sizes. His eyes became black as night. His back became covered with metal pins. His teeth became fangs. He took a blade from his chest and took it in his hand. The possessed man lunged towards one of the students in a split second, swung with all his might and almost cut off his arm, but the boy managed to escape. The cut on the boy's arm was emitting ominous black smoke, and part of his spiritual power could be seen escaping from it. The hero looked out the window into the auditorium, his mind racing between fear, shock, and confusion as to why none of the academy's guards were intervening. Li looked at the teacher, who stood motionless. One might think that everything was going according to plan, and this was the next stage of the exam. The fat man came out and saw Li standing there. The fat man's appearance was crazy. It didn't look like he was a bully who couldn't do anything before. Now he was a cold-blooded killer. The fat man rushed at our hero, who was so surprised he couldn't move. Li thought that it was all over and he would find peace. A blinding light appeared, and Li raised his head to see the fat man's blade strike stop the spirit of a beautiful girl in a white dress. Could this girl in the white dress really be my ghost companion? Li Feng thought. A voice came from the item, saying that the newbie mission had been completed, experience and a phantom spirit pill had been obtained, and the items and rewards would be automatically placed in the inventory. The girl's ghost turned around and offered to use the pill he received to improve his level from F rank to E rank. This pill not only pumped up the spirit, but also increased the hero's strength, vision, and hearing. The fat man again intended to attack Li, but his spirit companion blocked his path. Li looked at the girl and thought about what to call her. The name seemed to appear in his head. Li turned to the ghost and said that now her name would be Tonton. The girl turned around. Her face did not express any emotions, but it was clear from her eyes that she liked that she now had a name. Meanwhile, the fat man begins to increase in size even more. The black chakra around him destroys everything around him. Dark energy bursts out of his chest, and he drowns out everyone with his roar. The examiner says that the fat man has a D-rank evil spirit that is currently entering berserker mode. Li Feng and Tonton stand in front of the evil spirit, and Li is weighing his chances of victory, since he only gained new abilities and his companion spirit a few minutes ago. Li Feng understands that he doesn't yet know what Tonton is capable of, but he knows that her skills are inferior to Fatty, who has turned into a berserker. Berserker instantly rushes towards Li, who realizes that not only has his vision and hearing improved, but his reaction has also improved, and he will be able to block his blow. Li blocks the demon's attack with a chair, simultaneously moving out of the way of the attack, but the demon's speed and strength are no less than Li's. The demon, having smashed the chair to pieces with one blow, with a light movement of the blade almost reaches the back of Li's head. He is already mentally saying goodbye to today, which gave him a new friend and new strength. Li realizes that someone saved him and stopped the berserker's attack. Li sees Tonton holding the blade, the one who saved his life. And then the unimaginable happens. Tonton's dress and her eyes turn scarlet red. The bow on her head increases in size. Her hair flutters like a hurricane. The blade simply bursts in her hands. A red, sharp chakra began to concentrate in her hands like a whirlwind. Gathering energy in her right hand, Tonton sent it straight into the fat man's face. With a second powerful blow, she knocked the fat man out. He flew a great distance away, dropped the blade, and screamed either from pain or from the fact that the monster was eating him from the inside. Black liquid began to flow out of the fat man's mouth. His eyes went dark, his muscles deflated, and he fell to the floor with all his might. The fat man lay on the floor and did not move. There was not a single feature about him that would indicate that just a minute ago he had been much larger and exuded such incredible energy. The internal connection between Li and his companion's spirit made him realize that his spirit's experience and favorable attitude towards him had increased, and he had once again received the skill enhancement pill. Li felt how weak Tonton was. She needed to regain her strength. Tonton returned to the spiritual object. It was clear that the evil mode was taking up a lot of energy. This situation sparked a lot of talk among the academy students, who admired how strong Li was and how he was able to deal with the D-rank evil spirit. The examiner acknowledged Li Feng's strength and said that if it weren't for him, there would have been many innocent victims, including those people who treated him as a weakling. The teacher said that the ceremony was completed, and all those who had passed, including Li Feng, were enrolled as trainees in the Masters of Ghost Spirits, after which he said goodbye and began to effectively dissolve in blue flames. The students and Li Feng breathed a sigh of relief, feeling like this was the best day of their lives. The examiner had never seen a spirit reach E rank in its first summoning, nor did he understand how a good spirit could take on an evil form that was far beyond its rank. As he disappeared, the examiner looked at Li Feng and thought that he would still have to surprise the people around him more than once. Perhaps he would become a hero. Li held his spiritual item, feeling grateful as he felt the energy bursting out from within him. Li vowed to develop his spirit's abilities and become the strongest master. Li Feng lived in a small one-room apartment in the old central district of Louis City, an apartment allocated to him by the state because he was an orphan. It was late. Li Feng was lying on the bed, fiddling with his spiritual item. He uttered the name Tantan. The object in his hands lit up with light. An aura began to ooze from it, and the room became cold. A few seconds later, Tantan was already sitting on the bed, and Li told her that people sense ghosts by a decrease in temperature. Li thanked Tantan for saving him and noted that she had done a good job. The girl showed no emotion and did not answer. Li received a message on her personal spirit control panel that her experience had increased, and that her relationship with her master had also increased. Li realized that everything new he says or shows Tantan improves her level, and now she can be taught everything. Li was thinking about how to properly build a strategy for training Tantan. He encountered the training of spirits for the first time. He also knew that Tantan was not an ordinary spirit. Li tried to touch Tantan's head. It was not felt, but he received a message on the control panel that this action increased the companion's rating by 1 point. Li realized that everything can be taught and experience will increase. He started by learning the alphabet, which added to his experience and relationships. Tantan showed films on TV. I showed how to brush my teeth properly, and in just 1 day I gained 50 experience points and 10 points towards my companion relationship. Now I have to go to bed, Li Feng said. In the morning I have to join the training of the ghost spirit masters. Feng lay down, and Tantan did not return back to the object, but began to watch how Li slept. It was very strange for him to fall asleep in the cold that emanated from the ghost and under her supervision, but he could not offend her and say that she should not do this. The next morning, Li Feng was walking to the academy, and when a bus passed by, he heard his name. Someone enthusiastically shouted, "Yes, it's Li Feng," who on the first day of awakening the spirit was able to defeat a spirit of a higher rank. All the eyes of the students gathered at the bus stop were turned towards Li. Everyone wanted to get such a person into their company. They thought he knew some secret. Li approached the academic bus. A man in a hood and cloak was telling the students not to waste time and to take their seats. 108. Students filled the bus. The air was thick with uncertainty, and Li noticed that the bus was cold. It was cold as Li had guessed from the presence of ghosts. Some students were afraid to see them next to them. Li was not afraid of the spirits. He felt Tantan's calmness and understood that they would not harm anyone. Even the ghosts looked at Li Feng with interest, and the guys on the bus didn't understand why he was so calm. The caretaker who was seating the students on the bus came in and said that there was nothing to be afraid of these spirits and that they would not cause any harm. The caretaker said that the ghosts are companions, and the students must learn to interact with them in order to be able to adapt to the conditions of the outside city. The caretaker noted that often it is the living who need to be feared, not the spirits, and until everyone realizes this, they will not be able to become true masters of spirits. Buses took students across the bridge square to an underground highway, beyond which a huge wall of gold could be seen from afar. The bus carrying Li was the first to arrive at the checkpoint that led beyond the golden wall, and they were met by 3 guards who demanded that they stop and show their documents. The driver showed his documents and said that he was taking trainees to train at the Ghost Academy. After checking their documents, they were allowed through. The buses passed through the checkpoint. The students were excited. They wanted to see the new building where they would study. The buses moved through a long tunnel cut into the mountain, and a light was visible at the end of the tunnel. After leaving the tunnel, all the students pressed themselves as close to the bus windows as possible. They saw a wall of gold so high and thick that it was impossible to see where it ended because of the roof of the bus. One of the students said that gold prevents spirits from entering the academy grounds, and all the students were delighted. The bus stopped, the students were told to get out, and the spirits also followed the exit. 4 buses stopped at the main building of the academy, and the students began to get off one by one. Li Feng, getting off the bus, realized that they had arrived not at the central building of the academy, but at an outer city called Louis. The guide led the students to the statue of the great master of ghosts, after whom the city was named. Li turned around and saw a construction site where people were working together with ghosts. These ghosts were very cheerful, smiling, and it seemed that they could radiate not cold, but warmth. The excitement about the city died down and all attention was again focused on Li. Everyone tried to talk to Li Feng. He had never had so many fans wanting to meet him. The wind blew, and a purple tornado swirled right in the center of the crowd of students. The familiar examiner appeared on the square and greeted the students. From this point on, a 3-month trial began, requiring the students to obtain virtual maps showing the houses in which they would be able to live. But in order to move into a house, you need to defeat the spirit that lives in it. The higher the level of the house, the stronger the spirit lives in it, but the more comfortable it is to live in it. Li Feng wanted to get the coolest mansion and prove to everyone what he was capable of. The most beautiful girl from the first years ran up to Li and invited him to take the test together. She knew that he was the strongest student in the academy. It seemed as if the girl had cast a spell, she was so attractive. However, our hero decided not to succumb to her charm. He knew that he had to go this way alone. The girl almost cried because she was the most beautiful in her circle and had never been rejected by guys before. Li Feng decided to go in the opposite direction from all the students to the square of mansions. According to rumors, very evil spirits lived there. There were no people in the square of mansions. It seemed that no one lived there. Walking between the mansions, Li felt a negative aura so strong that he had not felt even from the berserker he had fought the day before. Li approached the largest mansion and saw an old man lying on a bench who said that he should find another house in another area. The old man said that despite the fact that this mansion was actually built for interns, no one had ever entered it in 10 years. Li asked what this was all about and whether no one deserved even a try. The old man said that many people have tried to move into this house, but they are all dead, since this house is inhabited by C-rank evil spirits, and even a true ghost master might not be able to defeat such a spirit alone. Li thought about it and began to believe that Tantan was a rank E ghost spirit, which meant a 2-rank difference with the monsters from the house, which was very dangerous, but a rank-increasing pill could be used. Li used the pill, and after the upgrade, he not only realized the increase, but felt it, as his body also strengthened by 80%. The old man shouted after Li as he walked towards the house, trying to stop him, but Li had already made up his mind. He knew that the difference between his spirit and the evil spirit guarding the huge house was now 1 level, and he understood that her scarlet mode temporarily increased her abilities by another level. He coldly calculated that in the special mode, Tantan's level and the evil spirit's level would be equal. Li went into the house but did not see any spirits in it. He was wary. Then a growl was heard from the 2nd floor, echoing throughout the entire house. A silhouette with eyes glowing red appeared on the 2nd floor. Li began to climb up, the steps creaking, trying not to show any concern about what was happening. He quickly walked up to the 2nd floor, but the place where the ghost had been just a few seconds ago was empty. Li thought he heard some knocking in the room nearby and ran in that direction. He swung the door open and saw that the noise was coming from 2 ghosts, the cook slicing bread and the maid carrying plates. A split second, and the ghosts dissolved into thin air. The dresses they were wearing fell to the floor. The plates crashed onto the table. The house became very quiet. Li became wary and began peering into the darkness of the room. A second later, a knife flashed behind Li Feng, pointing straight at his neck. "Tantan!" Li managed to shout loudly, and immediately a girl appeared, who directed chakra from both palms at the ghost of the house caretaker to reflect the fatal blow intended for her master and deliver a powerful blow of her own. However, the ghost reacted instantly and moved out of the line of attack, moving at tremendous speed. Tantan immediately ran out of the room after him and prepared for battle. Li Feng called loudly to Tantan, who had gone into battle, but she no longer heard him. Her attention was riveted to the ghost. Behind Li, he felt an evil chakra and heard an axe whistle through the air, flying straight at his head. He managed to dodge the thin, sharp blade of the axe, and the bottles standing behind him scattered. Li wanted to break out of the room, but saw that his path was blocked by the legs of another ghost. He turned around and saw that he was surrounded by the 3 ghosts he had seen earlier preparing food. "Didn't they warn you that there are only evil spirits in this house? Why did you come here?" Li was confused. Tantan was gone and couldn't protect him. He thought it was all over. Li decided to test his new abilities. He was sure that not only his reaction had improved, but also his speed of movement. Li ran towards the exit as fast as he could, dodging the ghost's attacks. And thank the gods, he managed to cross the threshold of the room unharmed. The ghost laughed loudly and shouted something unintelligible after him. Li was right, and he really began to move much faster. He turned towards the room where the 3 ghosts had just been. I saw 3 servants' costumes that the ghost had just been wearing fall to the floor, and I realized that they only appear when you enter the room. Li decided to test his theory, walked up to the doorway, and put 1 foot over the threshold. At that very moment, the ghost began to take on corporeal form again, and things began to rise above the floor. Li removed his leg and the clothes fell to the floor again. He thought that the main ghost was trying to lure him to a certain place where he had the greatest power, and probably this place would be the 2nd floor. This is bad because Tantan is in danger now. We need to find her urgently. Li ran very quickly down the corridor in the direction where Tantan had just flown. He needed to warn her in time. Running past the banquet hall, Li saw Tantan surrounded by dancing ghosts in business suits. He loudly shouted at her to immediately get out of the trap. Then, under the ceiling above Li, the ghost from which Tantan saved him appeared, and he realized that he had calculated it correctly, and the ghost raised a knife over Li's head. Li drew his golden blade from its sheath in a split second and parried the ghost's blow. After that, he jumped up to the ceiling and struck the ghost in the chest, but the ghost only grinned. Li couldn't understand why the golden blade didn't work. The evil spirit immediately struck back, but Li managed to dodge. The ghost kept advancing, Li moved backwards, and only because of his new abilities did he manage to dodge the blows, and then Li walked backwards into some room. Before he had time to cross the threshold of the room, the ghost disappeared, and his clothes fell to the floor. Li found himself in the room where Tantan was fighting. 2 ghosts from this company immediately turned their attention to the hero. He tried to attract the attention of the whole company that was causing trouble to Tantan, and he succeeded. Now they were hunting for him. Once he had distracted their attention, he was able to summon Tantan again. Tantan quickly flew towards Li and began to shrink to move into her object. The spirits tried to stop her at any cost, but it seemed they could not touch her. Li ran out of the room with Tantan, and the spirits behind him dissolved. He heard them screaming, their voices getting quieter. They were losing their power. As Li jumped over the railing from the 2nd floor, he heard the spirits' clothes fall to the floor of the room. While jumping from the 2nd floor, upon landing, he noticed that the floor had cracks, and perhaps he would not land on this floor. And he was right. As he landed, the floor beneath Li Feng's feet shattered into pieces, and he found himself in a basement. The fall left Li dizzy, and he had difficulty opening his eyes. Yes, fighting with C-rank evil spirits is a very reckless act. Before the hero could see what was around him, Tantan appeared from the object, and his throat went dry. He couldn't utter a word because of the shock he experienced. Tantan spread her arms in front of the unseen monster to protect its owner. It screamed in dozens of voices, and this scream echoed in the ears as piercing moans for help. This is a C-rank monster that absorbs souls to become stronger and distributes these souls into bodies to control them. That's why no one has ever gotten out of the house alive. Tantan formed blades from her chakra and threw them at the monster. However, the monster was able to control even the severed tentacles and struck Tantan. "Be careful, Tantan!" Li Feng shouted. He cut the monster's tentacles with a golden blade and tried to get closer to Tantan to save her. Li managed to strike a second before the monster grabbed Tantan with its tentacles. He saved Tantan, but did not notice how he himself found himself in the clutches of the monster, which wrapped around him from all sides. The monster pulled Li Feng towards itself to absorb him, but Tantan tried to stop it. She fought her way through dozens of tentacles to her master, as it was impossible to allow him to die. The hero slashed left and right with his blade, but his strength was leaving him. The monster devoured Li's body and soul, and he felt himself becoming light and calm. At this time, the old man told the examiner that Li Feng had gone to the most dangerous abode of monsters all alone. The master rushed to help Li as fast as he could. He knew that there were only seconds left before disaster struck. Li no longer felt his body, only his last thoughts flashed through his head. He didn't want to end his life at this moment. He tried to call upon Tantan, but he no longer had a voice. He was almost completely consumed by the terrible spirit. Tantan realized that if she did not transform into her highest form, they would both die. She immediately took on a bright scarlet form. A furious energy emanated from her, but she was not like the evil one that lived in this house. Li's body was engulfed by the monster. Only his palm was reaching out towards Tantan. She made her way through the monster's tentacles to her master's hand and grabbed it tightly. Tantan pulled Li towards herself with all her strength. It was incredibly difficult for her. She didn't know how to cope with him. One last push and Li is already in her hands. The monster, which contained 100 spirits, began to glow red and swell. Approaching the basement where Li and Tantan were, the master saw a bright light that spoke of an approaching explosion. The master went down to the basement to see what was left of the promising student Li Feng, who had shown courage and saved everyone just yesterday. There was an explosion, and the master was able to protect himself from it thanks to his aura. The explosion was so powerful that it could be heard far beyond the house. The old man was sure that no one survived, as was always the case. The master peered into the dust settling from the explosion to find Li Feng's remains. Imagine his surprise when he saw the living Li Feng, who was being held by Tong Tong, and there was no trace left of the C-rank ghost spirit. Tun Tun did not let go of her weakened owner, and it seemed that she was crying. Tun Tun moved into the spiritual item, and the spirit control hand computer noted that her combat experience had increased by 1,000 points. Li, rubbing the spiritual item, thanked Tun Tun for once again saving him from death. The master disappeared without revealing his presence to Li Feng, who was shocked. He told one of the members of the Outer Cities board about what he had seen. The board member's name was Yana. She was the leader of the Phantom Spirit Masters Guild, as well as the leader of the city of Louis. Yana was delighted to hear about the young intern who was able to achieve such results thanks to his unique spirit. She was thinking about how she could use this boy for her own purposes, because possession of such a spirit is a one-off case, 1 in a million and once every 100 years. She wondered if it was possible that Li was a descendant of one of the most ancient and powerful families that had ever been seen in history. The head of security reflected on how the boy had been overlooked, as children of such stature are monitored from childhood. When spirit magic was first developed, there were 4 powerful clans at its origins, each with their own unique abilities. The clan elders fought for dominance among the clans and experimented with spirit magic. They possessed unique powers, but were killed by one of the clan members, who, thanks to spirit magic, was able to combine the skills of all 4 clans. During the battle, the clan's power was dispersed across the planet, and after hundreds and thousands of years, absolutely anyone could become a spirit master. "I acknowledge your strength," the old man said. "You surprised me. You are a very capable guy. I have high hopes for you. Getting a mansion at 16 is very cool." Li went to the registration line where he had to write his information and place of residence. While waiting in line, Li listened to stories about how the students had united as a crowd and dealt with the weak spirits, and how one of the guys had gone to the Square of Mansions and lost his spirit there in battle, and now he would have to live the life of an ordinary person. It was Li's turn to register, and he was asked where he would be staying. The guy registering the mansion's face twisted when he saw the key to the mansion. 248. The registrar, like the student standing in line behind the hero, could not believe that he had single-handedly defeated the evil spirit of the mansion. The crowd discussed what had happened with fear and envy. They did not believe that there were such strong trainees among them who could single-handedly deal with the evil spirit. The registrar congratulated Li and said that he was the only one who, at 16 years old, was able to defeat a spirit of such a level, and expressed his respect for him. Li received a smartphone with 10,000 points on his balance. Now it's time to relax, thought Li, while everyone continued to discuss what had happened. The girls were delighted with Li, as they only had 3,000 points for the entire team, while he alone had 10,000. They were wondering if they could live in the mansion if he was seduced. Li called Tun Tun to thank her for saving his life. "Good job, Tun Tun. I couldn't have done it without you. We received 10,000 points as a reward, and we can buy ourselves gifts. I want you to go shopping with me." Tun Tun nodded and grinned, something she had never done before. Li Feng was very surprised and began to think that Tun Tun's consciousness was developing and that he would soon be able to communicate with her as a friend. Li Feng went to the outer city with Tun Tun to take a walk and buy some necessities. Li and Tun got off the bus on Suzuka Street and noticed how many ghosts were living in the city. Li and Tun approached a store called No Barriers, curious to see what they sold there. Even though Li received 10,000 credits, he was not going to be a spendthrift and buy unnecessary things. First, he wanted to buy basic necessities. Li was shocked when he had to pay 800 credits for bed linen due to the shortage of goods at that time. Li decided that he would not buy a blanket for reasons of economy, since in the summer he was already comfortable under the sheets. He was about to leave the store when he saw Tun Tun, who was carrying various things. She had a lot of packages of toilet paper and napkins in her hands. Li didn't know why she needed all of this. Even though Li didn't think it was necessary to buy that much toilet paper, he couldn't refuse Tun Tun, because thanks to her, he got a house and 10,000 credits. He had to shell out another 639 credits for toilet paper and napkins. A moment later, Tun was already pushing a cart filled with groceries at speed. Next, Tun wanted to visit a women's clothing store and choose different outfits for herself, but Li didn't know if she would need all the things she was buying. Tun took Li to the gun department, where she tried out all the weapons that were available for sale. Returning to the mansion, Li rolled a huge cart with all sorts of things and spent more than 9,000 credits. Even though he spent almost all of his money, his relationship with Tan improved and she was happy. Tan began to show more emotions and understand Li at a glance. Li was relaxing by the pool at his mansion, thinking about what they would do next to develop themselves and achieve their goal of becoming a spirit master. First, they need to complete some mission to earn money, as they are left with almost empty pockets. Li, after looking at the available missions, realized that they didn't need F and E rank missions, which paid up to 2,000, but rather C rank missions, which paid 20,000 right away. Li went to the outer city to the food warehouses where a C rank ghost lives, devouring food from the premises for several months. Even though the warehouses were located on the first line of defense, where there should have been many spirit masters protecting the city, Li noticed that the place was not that crowded. The warehouse workers asked Li if a ghost spirit trainee could complete a C-rank mission, to which Li responded with a definite yes. The elder gave the hero a map with the point where food losses most often occur marked on it and told him to follow there. He was warned that he would most likely not be able to complete this mission in one day and that he would have to spend several days sleeping in warehouses. The workers tried to tell Li something else about how to catch the ghost, but he brushed them off and said that he didn't need help or instructions. The workers discussed how many ghost spirit masters die each year, emphasizing that the ones who die most often are the self-righteous brats who don't listen to adults. Li made his way to the point marked on the map, taking in the beauty of the wilderness and breathing in the fresh air. And so a few hours later, Li was already at the foot of the cave, which was guarded by 2 food masters. They were grateful to see Li and know that he had come to help them sort out the situation and give the ghost who was keeping them on so many shifts. He was also told that the cave was used not only for food, but also for protection in the event of an attack on the city's first line of defense, and was therefore strategically important. The cave looked small on the outside, but was huge on the inside. Li said that he would help them figure out their problem, enter the cave, and not leave a single wet spot of the spirit. The Guardians told Li that the ghost was not dangerous to people, but was consuming unimaginably large amounts of food and would soon have nothing to feed the people guarding the first line of defense. The keepers said that other spirit masters had already tried to catch the spirit, but they were never able to find it, since it hides when it sees any people. Tan, let's get to work and find this creepy spirit and punish him to the fullest extent. Tan, as always, appeared in her charming outfit, and from her look, it was clear that she was in business and understood what was required of her. Tan was so attractive that the keepers, upon seeing her, began to drool and were embarrassed by her presence. Li asked Tong if she felt the presence of spirits and how he could help her detect it. Tun pointed to the exit of the cave, but Li couldn't understand what it meant. "What does your nod mean, Tun? Do you mean the sign is outside?" In a flash, Tun changed her snow-white aura to a scarlet-red chakra of explosive force. A third eye reminiscent of Itachi's Sharingan opened on her forehead. Her pupils disappeared, her eyeballs became bloodshot, and the skull and butterfly in her hair grew larger. Everyone around was mesmerized and frightened by Tan's new form. Tan looks towards the exit where the guards are standing. Is it really possible that the ghost is outside, and that is why no one could find him during the day? Tun pointed her finger and everyone was confused. No one understood what was happening, because Tun was pointing his finger at one of the caretakers. The caretaker was terribly frightened and did not understand what to do. He knew that he was not possessed by a ghost, and at that moment something in the caretaker's jacket pocket began to move and emit a green glow. The pocket continued to move and make sounds that echoed throughout the cave. Is the devourer hiding in his jacket pocket? How is that possible? There was a loud bang and a green light poured upward, engulfing the caretaker, who already looked like a scary zombie. His features took on the appearance of an old man. His eyes were blacker than night, his skin was cracked and veins stood out. He suddenly turned over and found himself on the ceiling. His mouth turned black and widened to his ears. He screamed in a frantic voice. The caretaker's partner was in a state of wild horror. He didn't know what to expect from the ghost, since everyone thought that he didn't touch people. The devourer rushed towards his partner with an open mouth, but the hero met him with a kick to the face. The blow was so strong that the devourer in the caretaker's body was thrown 100 meters towards the exit of the cave. However, this did not delay him for long, and he, rising in a split second, rushed back into battle with even greater bloodthirstiness. My body has improved twice as much from such a blow. An ordinary person would not have collected bones, but in his body there is a ghost, and he has not been human for a long time. Li wanted to attack, but then Tonton intervened. Her mood was very serious. She jumped up, grabbed the devourer by the neck in one movement, and pulled him towards herself. The ghost resisted as best he could, but Tonton held him so tightly that he could do nothing and only made wheezing sounds. With a light movement of her right hand, she grabbed the spirit through the caretaker's huge mouth and pulled it towards herself with all her might. She began to pull the spirit out of the caretaker. It glowed green and tried to kill the caretaker before it left his body. Tonton threw the ghost like a baseball, leaving him with no chance of coming back. The light in the cave disappeared. It was swallowed by the green spirit of the devourer. The pitch darkness could play into his hands, since he could see in the dark. And then the hero realized that it was not the ghost that absorbed the light, but it simply absorbed them. Now they were inside the ghost. So, don't panic. You need to think with a cool head. You need to not only save yourself, but also complete the mission. Otherwise, there will be no money to buy toilet paper for Tonton. Li and the caretaker were in the ghost territory. Only a very strong spirit can create its own territory inside itself, so that no one outside can see what is happening inside. Where did everyone go? Where did the owner and the caretaker disappear to? Where are all the people? And how did they manage to disappear in an instant? A purple tongue appeared out of nowhere and tried to grab Li, but he managed to dodge. But the tongue grabbed the caretaker and began to squeeze him so hard that he began to lose consciousness. The tongue suddenly jerked the caretaker towards itself, and he was already flying into the mouth of the ghost's territory, and the hero could do nothing about it. He tried to jump up and grab the prisoner to hold him and prevent the monster from taking him. But at the moment of the jump, his leg ended up in another toothy mouth, which did not allow him to make the jump. Li immediately took out a golden blade and thrust it with all his might into the mouth, holding his leg. He struck the blade at the mouth and teeth of the monster's territory, but there was no reaction. The hero saw a red glow as fangs appeared and felt himself being pulled down. He realized that he was being sucked into one of the many mouths, and he was doomed to die unless Tonton appeared again. And then Li saw her, as always charmingly terrible Tonton, her hair fluttering like her dress. The hero, who was standing almost falling, saw that he was no longer in the ghost's territory, which meant that Tonton had destroyed him after all. As always, he was very glad to see her in moments when he was facing imminent death. Information about the acquired experience and the new absorption ability appeared on the spirit's control panel. Tan walked to her master again with tears in her eyes. She thought that she would no longer be able to find him. Her eyes showed concern for the hero. She didn't know if everything was okay with him. "Don't worry, Tonton, I'm fine," said the hero and stroked the ghost's hair. She smiled. A few hours later, Li returned to the food department, and because of his early return, no one could have thought that the mission would be completed. Everyone thought that he had given up. The head of the food department looked at Li Feng with big round eyes, not understanding how it was possible to deal with a ghost of such a high rank so quickly. A specialist who measures the aura of ghosts confirmed that the evil aura is no longer in the area. The head of the food department apologized for underestimating Li and thanked him for the work he had done, then informed him that the reward for the mission would be credited to his account. Late in the evening, Li told Tonton that they had received a reward of 15,000 credits and that their next mission would raise her level to C rank. She will also be able to create a ghost territory like the one she defeated today. With each upgrade, your strength and potential grow and new opportunities open up, but now each new skill is more difficult to level up. The possibility of ghost absorption also appeared, and Li noted that they were lucky to meet a weak C-rank ghost today. In 3 days, Tonton's abilities must be raised to a new level, and to do this, he must complete as many D-rank missions as possible. We need to find a new mission. Let's go try to book it in the city since the online booking is frozen for some reason. 3 trainees were sitting in a cafe and discussing how someone had taken all the D-rank missions, and they had just teamed up and wanted to take one mission for everyone. At this time, Li and Tonton were carrying out D-rank missions one after another, and it was because of them that others were unable to take these missions. The teamwork between the two amazed people, who learned about how much they had already accomplished alone without teaming up with other trainees. Everyone started calling this duo the superheroes of the ghost world. No one could stand in their way. They did their job like professionals. With each mission, experience points, interactions, and mission credits increased, and they also received the next pill. When the pill was received after another victory, Li and Tan decided to rest and gain strength. It's time to level up to C rank, to move on to the next, more difficult stage on the path to achieving the title of Spirit Master. It's interesting to see what your Tantan ghost territory looks like. Let's try activating it and see how we can use it in battle. The second line of defense, somewhere in the mountains, a ghost territory has been created, assessed by members of the Council of Ghost Lords on Brang. The B-rank members of the Liwu City Ghost Council saw the ghost territory from afar and decided to check what was going on and who created it. They wanted to get what was in this territory and destroy the ghost itself, and they decided that 3 masters of their rank could easily deal with 1 ghost of their own rank. The ghost territory looked like the vast territory of a rich gentleman's estate. They examined the nearby rooms but found nothing in them. They saw a locked door and hoped that the spirit would be behind it. One of the squad members kicked the doors with all his might, causing them to fly apart in all directions. What did they see when the doors opened before them? 370. A geisha's ritual bright red dress symbolizes imminent death and destruction. They began to examine the room in the hope that they would understand what was going on here, and who was the owner of the territory. This was very strange, one of the 3 masters noted. If there was an evil spirit here, then our ghost would certainly have reacted, but as it is, I don't feel like there is anyone here. One of the masters looked into the mirror on the wall and was overcome with wild horror. He began to scream furiously. The mirror reflected the head of a ghost girl. The action took place at night. This really scared the masters. The girl in the mirror began to draw some symbols on her forehead with a brush and red paint. The 3rd master shouted at the top of his lungs, drawing the attention of his colleagues to the mirror. "Come out, ghost!" shouted the spirit masters, and fearing an attack, divided the visibility control zones. What scared them most was that they could not summon their ghosts, but were in great danger and had to rely only on themselves. And then the senior master realized that this ghost territory breaks the connection between the ghost and the person who finds himself in it. They tried to run to the exit, but someone was already in their way, knocking very hard on the door. Something with blood-red eyes and a hood burst into the room and began to catch up with the masters, and they ran in terror wherever their eyes looked. All that remained of the ghost territory were wooden splinters and stone fragments. Nearby lay the corpses of D-rank masters. They were also members of the government of the city of Louis. The chairman of the board and his assistants went to the scene of the death of 3 subordinates and were horrified by the scene they witnessed. "We've been tracking this ghost for months now and we can't catch him. He wants something that's located within our city." "What do you think he wants from the city? Maybe he just wants to destroy the government." "We still haven't been able to find out any significant information about this ghost. The experts will take the bodies to the base and try to find out at least some information about the ghost. I'll create shadow clones and send them along with the groups to help, and you notify the spirit masters not to take part in missions outside the city." Meanwhile, the hero was surprised that all C-rank missions in the program were free and no one wanted to carry out a mission outside the city. Li Feng decided that since he and Tonton were outside, why not test her new abilities in a real fight? And here is the place where the mission should begin. It's strange that you can't even hear the leaves swaying. He saw farmers hanged on tree branches and asked himself who did this to the poor people, who raised their hand. Could this be the ghost of a hanged man who amuses himself in this way? There was no one in the forest except the hanged people. Li became wary. "It's strange, I could swear that I already saw this dead man half an hour ago. Am I really going in circles?" There was a strange sound of branches breaking. He didn't understand what was happening. There was a strange growling sound, and the hero didn't understand what was happening as more corpses began to hang above him. Li Feng took a fighting stance and prepared for battle. His reflexes were at a high level. He realized that he had entered a ghostly territory that looked like a fruit forest, but the enemy was already approaching from behind. Li Feng dodged the blow and tried to grab the ghost's hair, but it was intangible. The hanged farmer's hair wrapped around the hero's throat and began to choke him, and he could not utter a word. But then Tantan appeared and was able to free the hero's throat from the ghostly hair. While the hero was coughing, Tantan was already ready to start the battle and intended to win. The other hanged ghosts also began to attack the hero and his friend. But Tantan had transformed into her highest form, now wearing a bright red dress and an enlarged bow. The long, ghostly hair of the hanged farmers was torn apart by Tantan's touch. But the ghosts, without sparing themselves, continued to attack. They had no consciousness. They were controlled by an unknown ghost. Tantan used the power of destructive flame, and the enemies began to melt, not reaching the heroes. A moment later, the heroes were already standing and examining the magical rope of ghosts they had received as a reward. Li Feng was surprised by such a quick victory. Along with the rope, the heroes also received a magic pill that could increase their level. Meanwhile, in the outer city, there was talk of a ghost living outside the city gates that was destroying powerful spirit masters. Because of this, the city's leadership decided to close the main gates to avoid unnecessary losses among the spirit masters. There was talk that due to the increase in the number of evil spirits, the masters would face gradual extermination. They didn't forget to discuss Li Feng, who at such a young age was able to defeat such powerful monsters and occupy the mansion. The spies were collecting information. The spies discussed the veracity of the rumors about Li Feng's strong spirit. They planned to kill a lucky student, capture his spirit companion, sell him, and become the richest. Night has fallen. We are observing the area of mansions, where the mansion received by Li Feng is located. The spies walk through the mansion area and learn from one of the students that the hero has not been home for several days, as he is on a mission outside the city. The student also reveals that Li Feng is the only student who completes missions outside the wall, and his spirit has almost reached C rank. The spies did not tell the student why they were looking for Li Feng. They said that they were simply interested in seeing such a famous spirit master. The spies discussed their luck. They believed that since the hero was behind the wall and all the masters were in the city, no one could help him. After killing him, they planned to use the magic bag to seal the hero's spirit in order to sell it later. We are transported to the resting place of the hero, and his ghostly spirit, Tan has fenced off the camp with protective seals and is guarding the sleeping Li Feng. The hero woke up, left the tent, and saw that Tan was cold and bored. He thanked her for her responsible service and stroked her head. She was happy. He took out his smartphone from his pocket to find the next C-rank mission. He saw that he had received several messages that spoke of the appearance of an evil spirit, because of which all the masters had left for the city. He understood why all the missions outside the city were free. His classmate also sent a message about suspicious men in cloaks who were interested in his progress and told him to be careful. The hero realized how they could track him down using the general mission table. Right now, he's the only one outside the city where a C-rank mission can be completed, so once he selects it, it will be marked as in progress, and that's how they'll figure out his future location. The hero realized that he couldn't hesitate, otherwise they would be hot on his heels. To deceive the hunters, he chose a mission in the mountains, where an evil spirit lived that killed lumberjacks, and he himself went on a mission to a stone quarry. Without wasting any time, the hero set off on a journey that would take him 50 kilometers. Li Feng arrived at a stone quarry where a ghost lived, collapsing caves and killing the quarry workers. The hero decided not to notify anyone of his arrival in order to gain time and be able to get out of here before the ghost hunters arrived. As expected, the hero was able to arrive at the quarry for the mission, and a notification in the general task list stated that he was on a mission in the forest. The ghost hunters immediately rushed to the forested area, hoping to get ahead of the hero and set a trap for him. After some time, they arrived at the mission location and were confident that they had reached it before the hero. The hunters decided to set up an ambush on a high hill and wait for Li Feng there. At this time, a battle was already taking place in cave number 3 of the stone quarry. Li Feng and Tan blew the C-rank monster into pieces and buried it in that very cave with a powerful explosion. After this, the hero came to the administration premises to officially accept the mission. He said that he had destroyed the stone ghost that was the target of the quest in the stone quarry. The manager said that no one had officially taken on this mission yet. Li Feng said that the man did not have the correct information and carefully pressed the button behind his back to accept the mission. The man looked at the electronic journal again and indeed saw that the mission had been accepted. The hunters also saw a notification about accepting a mission at the quarry and couldn't figure out where they needed to go. The senior hunter suggested splitting up to make sure they didn't lose Li Feng. The hunters agreed to wait for the boy, and whoever saw him first would inform their partner. The senior hunter arrived at the quarry and began to find out who had taken on the mission to destroy the stone ghost. The manager reported that the young man had destroyed the ghost and left about 15 minutes ago and ran away. The man said he didn't know exactly where the boy went, but he could point him in the general direction. The hunter threw the manager to the ground and moved at full speed in the indicated direction. The manager was surprised by such treatment from the master of ghosts and believed that he was not worthy of this title. He picked up his smartphone and started typing something, looking in the direction where the evil spirit hunter had recently run off to. Li Feng received a message on his phone that a few minutes ago a spirit master in a cloak appeared at the quarry and asked about the hero. As it turned out, 3 hours ago, Li Feng asked the manager to inform anyone who was looking for him that the hero had run away in a certain direction 15 minutes ago. The hero informed Tantan that the plan had worked and their pursuers had split up, as only one of them had arrived at the stone quarry. They are confident that the hero has just emerged from the stone quarry and will be waiting for the start of the next task, which the hero has just officially accepted through the app. However, when Li Feng confirmed the mission, it had already been completed and the water evil ghost had been defeated. Li Feng determined where the bounty hunters were now and decided to organize his own hunt, since his actions had driven them into a trap. One of the hunters informed his partner that the hero had chosen a mission in the Coldwater Cave, and he would try to get there before him to set up an ambush. Li Feng already had his own plan, and he had no intention of falling into the hunter's trap. The hero felt his strength and the strength of his spirit. He felt sorry for those people who thought they could kill him. While everyone thought that Li was in the Coldwater Cave, he was heading towards Mount Xiaofen, from where one of the hunters was supposed to be heading. The spiritual object was illuminated by light. This is Tantan sensing the presence of evil spirits. She immediately appeared in her highest form, in a red dress and with glowing eyes without pupils. She hugged the hero, and her dress began to wrap around both of them, creating a powerful protective barrier. And not in vain. A red meteorite flew past them like a rocket. Its energy was astonishing. The hero looked at the meteor moving at great speed and did not understand what was happening. Li Feng realized that a powerful ghost was flying above them, so Tantan hid it with her energy. Li thought that he had never seen her possess such magical ability before, and realized that with each battle she was discovering new abilities. The ghost bonus system gave Li the opportunity to gain a random skill for Tantan. They gained the ability to restore damaged magical items. To activate the ability, it was necessary to place a regeneration item in the ghost's hand. Li decided to restore the rope made from the hair of the dead, which was controlled by the C-rank ghost. Now this rope could be used to bind evil ghosts. Li liked the fact that he had such an object, because often a person cannot touch a ghost to stop it. The hero heard the voices of 4 travelers in cloaks. They were addressing him. The hero recognized them by their special cloaks. They were people working for the city government. They asked Li what he was doing alone so far from the main city. Without waiting for an answer, they told him that if he did not want to die a terrible death, he needed to return to the city. The hero realized that the people from the government team were tracking the red light that had flashed across the sky a few minutes ago. The hero thought he was very lucky that he and the red light were going in different directions. Meanwhile, in the camp on the border defense, they were discussing the examination of the killed B-rank masters. It was determined that the masters were unable to even summon their spirits, and since 3 B-rank masters could not be defeated even by an A-rank spirit, they were being hunted by a ghost of unknown power. The mayor received a call from a girl on her team who said that they were following the trail of a red meteorite and that they had met a student outside the city. A girl from the team asked the city head to report this to the Academy of Phantom Spirits. Night fell and the hero reached Mount Xiaofen. He lay in wait in hopes of spotting one of the hunters who wanted to kill him. Li Feng realized that the best view of the area was from this dilapidated tower and that the enemies were probably hiding there. The hunter was talking on the phone and had already been informed that the monster in the cold water cave had been destroyed before the senior hunter arrived. While the discussion about selling Tantan after killing the hero was taking place, Li Feng was already behind the bandit. He called on Tantan to deal with him before the second hunter arrived. Tantan rushed at the man, but he sensed their energy and dodged the blow. He summoned his spirit, a ghost with a cat's face. A battle between 2 ghosts began. The cat was a C-rank spirit. The hero decided not to stand aside and deal with the spirit master. He took out his golden blade and going around the enemy's back, swung it to destroy him. The blade entered straight into the enemy's chest. He screamed, and a green glow appeared from his chest like his spirit. At that moment, the spirit with the cat's face growled with all its might and launched an energy of unknown power around everyone present. His energy absorbed everything around him. He activated his ghost territory. Dozens of cats began to appear around, their meowing echoing in the hero's head. The cat-faced ghost let out a mad roar. It was clear that he was calling upon the spirits of dead cats. He began to point them to the main character and his ghost. The dead cats rushed at their opponents in the hopes of scratching them and taking their souls. But Tantan was already forming the seal of the fireball technique. The surviving cats had their tails burnt, while the rest were left with no ashes. Li Feng was surprised at the level at which the battle was taking place. The explosives were so powerful that everything living within a kilometer radius dissolved in flames. But something incredible happened, and Li found himself in the ghostly territory of Tantan. Seeing the rides, Li thought that Tantan was really still a child. Crazy-looking carousel of domestic animals, a steam locomotive, and soft toys that were moving in the same direction. They walked towards the wounded ghost hunter who was clutching his chest. The crazy rides were almost close to the enemy and were ready to strike. But the cat-faced ghost resisted the attack and defended its owner. The hunter jumped back from the line of attack and thought that Tantan's power would not reach him. He felt foul breath and nervous laughter. It was like a clown in a circus. The hunter had never been so right as now, but it was too late. The clown's huge head caught up with him and opened its mouth above his head. A split second and the red liquid from the hunter's body scattered in different directions. Li Feng noticed that the ghostly green aura that had accompanied the hunter until now had begun to disappear. The ghostly territory of Tantan and the cat-faced spirit began to disappear at the same time. But they did not end up in the same place where they were before the battle began. It was some kind of buffer territory. The ghost with the cat's face hurried forward across the bridge, and Tantan rushed to catch up with him. Li Feng couldn't stop her. She didn't hear his call. The ghost of the enemy managed to fly into the monastery. After that, some shoes appeared there. These were magic slippers. Li did not know what they were or what danger they carried. Tantan was already on the threshold of the monastery when the hero decided to use the magic rope to stop his companion. Without wasting any time, he launched the rope at his ghost with all his might. And at the last second, he managed to grab her and drag her away from the monastery. He pulled her with such force that she crashed into him and knocked him down. They found themselves near the place where their battle had recently begun. The hero asked his ghost how she was feeling. She showed him the red embroidered shoes that were on the threshold of the monastery. Li Feng didn't know if they could have spiritual power. Meanwhile, several dozen kilometers away, an evil spirit of unknown rank was attacking the city mayor's team. The evil spirit flew straight towards 4 masters in the cloaks of the city administration. At the last moment, the red rocket turned and flew in the other direction. The administration team thought that the ghost sensed that a more important target was nearby. Meanwhile, Li was asked to use the ghost pill and level up to B rank. Tantan's level was raised, and a system message was received that a new spiritual item needed to be selected and linked to the spirit of its owner. The hero rummaged through his bag and decided to choose the shoes that Tantan had been trying so hard to get. The system notified Li Feng that the shoes needed to be returned to the bride in her wedding dress without dying. The red arrow flew at maximum speed. She felt that she would soon reach what she had been looking for so long. The red arrow turned out to be a ghost in a red wedding dress. It was flying after its shoes. Li Feng was in danger.